Welcome to the Somm Demand Studio. David Roby here, resident Somm, and joined by my good friend, partner, and Chief Technical Officer of SommDemand.com, Nicholas James.
Pleasure to be here tasting with you, David.
It is great to be here. While we do John Paulo, I certainly don't. It is great to be on camera with you, and we are going to be tasting some Cabernet today. Yeah, so we're going to be going through 3 Napa Valley Cabernets. You know, those are, I think, 2 hot takes right there, right? Napa Valley, which we hear a lot about, and then Cabernet Sauvignon, which is actually the most widely planted grape in the entire world. Did you know that?
I had no idea.
Yes. And so, you know, these are things that we hear about all the time. Oh, I'm going to Napa, or, oh, I'd love a great cab is what I hear. You know, I'm working in the restaurant a lot. And so you've actually had some feelings about Cabernet, right? You kind of felt like there's 2, you were talking earlier, there's kind of like 2 ends for you.
Yeah. I feel like there's kind of a, the high end premium Napa cabs where you're paying, lots and lots of money per bottle, the kind of stuff you hear about, in the headlines. And then there's kind of that nondescript grocery store Cabernet. And I'm just so excited to try that sweet spot in the middle.
Yeah. That's what we want to bring for you. We want to introduce some relatively affordable wines. I mean, we're talking about Napa Valley Cabernet, which calls for some of the highest prices in the world, along with, the first gross of Bordeaux. Oftentimes, these are even more expensive when you get into the deep world of Napa. Burgundy is quite expensive these days. These are wines that it's not uncommon to see for multiple hundreds or even 1,000 or 2 on a wine list. So in front of us today, we have definitely some more affordable options, and they're right in that sweet spot. And then to talk about a little bit, you mentioned the grocery store wines. Not to say that Napa Valley is a guarantee of quality, but just like any other appellation, right? When something comes from Napa Valley, we're talking about a particular climate. We're talking about a certain amount of history, a certain amount of winemaking. And, these 3 are kind of right in the middle of more affordable, not going to bank. Yes, you can cellar 1 or 2 of them. But really, these are definitely approachable styles that can be enjoyed now, right? Which is why we're here. So the 3 wines we have today.
We have the Branham Resolution Napa Valley Cabernet 2019, the Recoltant Napa Valley Cabernet from 2018, and the Turnbull Napa Valley Cabernet from 2019.
Yeah, and we're going to go exactly in that order. And I mean, I've mentioned a little bit about geography, but is there a place you think of other than Napa Valley, when you think of Cabernet?
Well, I think with Napa in our backyard, so many people think of Napa when they think of Cabernet, but I think of Bordeaux. I know that to be kind of like the home of Cabernet.
Definitely. That left bank, if you've heard of, is usually Cabernet based, right? Yeah, and then the right bank, you might see a little more Merlot, but not really relevant to this one. But for centuries, Bordeaux has been the benchmark for Cabernet, and is, one could argue, the reason that it is so widely planted around the world today was the success that the grape had there. But you do get some differences when you talk about Napa Cabernet versus a Bordeaux. So Bordeaux's, they tend to lead more towards the graphite, a little more of the cedar, a little more of the tobacco, kind of those more savory flavors, right? And then when you come to California, you got definitely a riper climate, or warmer climate. Yeah, more fruit, exactly. And those fruits will be a little darker, really purple, really, some black fruits. And instead of getting those kind of more savory cedars and leathers, you might get chocolate, coffee, right? Still have those savory notes, but my favorite coffees have a little sweet undertone. Chocolate, definitely has a little bit of that sweet and savory action going on. And so, that really comes from the fact that Napa is close to the equator, as well as that it's a valley that, that starts in the southern tip of the San Pablo, or the northern tip of the San Pablo Bay, but in California, right, very close to some cool winds. And as you travel further north into the valley, you actually get a warmer climate, which actually I think I can show you here. Let me pull this one up. Yeah. Ooh. There we go. Perfect. And so here we've got, a nice little map of the Napa Valley. So the first wine that we're tasting here, the Branham, is going to be coming from the St. Helena and Calistoga area. here up in the northern side. As we move to the second wine, we're going to be moving more towards the Stag's Leap district and the Combsville district, which is further south and actually is a slightly cooler climate. The tip of that San Pablo Bay down here is down in the south, right? And, basically, as you move further north is where you're going to get even a warmer climate, which is atypical for wine in general, right? We typically think of moving from north to south as the southern getting cooler, but moving away from water, it's kind of an inverse in Napa that I wouldn't say makes it too complicated.
I feel like one thing this area is famous for is microclimates, right?
That's true. Tons of microclimates.
Napa is no exception.
Napa is no exception. We definitely have a lot of microclimates there, but generally you can rely on the fact that it is going to be a warmer area than Bordeaux. And so because, one thing about, California winemaking style, definitely, in the late 90s, early 2000s, some people say it went a little too far with how ripe the wines got and how long they were left on the vines and how high the alcohols got. Don't forget that, ripeness correlates to sugar, which correlates to higher alcohol in many cases. But, because it is so beautiful here in California and we're not so worried about the rain all the time coming to these grapes, it's really tempting for winemakers to leave the grapes on the vine a little longer because you get more of that ripe, delicious fruit. You get more of that body that people seek so much. But, it can go a little too far. Sometimes it can get to be a point of almost sweetness or a lack of structure. So they can feel excessively sweet and feel a little heavy, which is not what we want. And hopefully with these wines, we feel a little more of that balance.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. You ready to taste?
I can't wait.
Can't wait. All right. So we'll start with wine number 1. Cheers.
Branham.
Right off the bat, just a lot of I know we're talking about dark fruits, but it's almost got like a red and black fruit thing going on in the world of Cabernet, in the relative spectrum. So how do you feel about those tannins? You feel a lot of tannin?
Pretty soft tannins, though. I think it's definitely a like a big wine. But as far as Cabernet goes, I've come to expect something even more extracted, and I think that while this would go great with food, it does feel like something that kind of stands on its own. It's like really drinkable.
Yeah, I was trying to trick you. No, I'm just kidding. I loaded him up with that question of the tannins were, but I definitely get a really soft, supple tannin. It's pretty smooth for Cabernet. Just so you guys know, I wouldn't think that you need to decant these wines. We love to drink them out of bottle and kind of watch them evolve over an hour or so. We opened these about 30 minutes ago. So if you're tasting along with us, you're not too far behind if you just popped the bottle when we started. But definitely not a lot of tannin. And I guess that would probably come a little bit from the winemaking as well. So we are, in St. Helena, lots of ripe fruit. And I think Branham's really showing the purity of the fruit of the Cabernet Sauvignon, right? We're not seeing anything adulterated here with new oak. So this is actually all used barrique that it's aged in. And so, as we may know, when you add a little new oak, it adds a little more of that tannic profile and maybe a little more spice qualities. But this one's really all about the freshness.
It's pretty.
Yeah.
It's pretty and it's approachable.
It's aromatic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, soft and smooth. And so, I think, you'll see a lot of very famous and established wineries in St. Helena, and they will get something a little riper. Here we're looking at 14.9%, which is definitely not shy, but they can bring them even higher and touch them with, even more, or touch them with a lot of new oak, and it kind of turns into. This is definitely Branham saying, just enjoy this wine.
And I am.
And you are.
And I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. And part of the affordability of this wine, so it is online for $29, sommdemand.com. And I'd say part of that affordability is definitely the lack of new oak. As you know, buying new trees can be expensive.
New barrels. Someone's got to make that barrel.
Toast that barrel, ship that barrel. All that kind of adds up to what.
And you only get to use it once. Only once is it new, right? Or how many times is it new?
Yeah, most people regard a new barrel be the first time. Neutral is a different term because a neutral barrel is can be maybe on the third or fourth time, depending on who the winer maker is, we'll deem a barrel neutral. Some people say after one use that they're neutral, but many people think that the oak flavor still resides in the second pass and even in the third pass as well.
Cool.
Yeah, it's all relative there, but you know, is what it is. So we move on to wine number 2.
Recoltant.
Recoltant. What do you notice different on the nose right away?
Maybe like almost a little dustier.
Dustier, yeah. Kind of a little more of those earth notes.
Yeah. It's a little savory.
Yeah, definitely a little more savory. What about the color of the fruit?
It's like, I'd say like maybe a little more, I don't know, it's tough to tell. A little more.
No, give a smell. Give a smell just on the nose.
Oh, on the fruit. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Darker fruits.
Darker fruits.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that darkness, I think, while we did move, south to Collinsville, this is now being touched with a mixture of new and used wood. And so you're definitely getting a little more of those spice notes. You said darkness.
I definitely taste like a little more like the chocolate on the palate.
Yeah, I get coffee.
Coffee, yeah.
Chocolate to me is even further.
Sure.
Like down the rung, right? If we talk about, what is savory or, what is dense. Coffee to me, has those sweet notes. You can get cocoa notes, but it still has a little of that kind of dustiness that you're talking about.
Yeah. Cool. Like the perfect roast.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect roast has berry, has, earthy, well, for some people. And then the palate, do you feel like the tannins?
It's a drier wine. It's like drier on my palate. I'm noticing that this wine could do with food, I think.
Yeah.
Or at least more so than maybe the Branham. Yeah.
So dryness, applies to acidity and applies to tannin as well. I think that definitely I feel more of that tannic structure, a little more of that kind of drying sensation coming off of the sides of my tongues. It's not up in my gums really. It's not, quite around, but I feel it in the mid palate, just on the sides of my cheeks, a little more of that structure that I'd expect from a Cabernet. It's almost like the Branham didn't have it, even though you expect it with a Cabernet.
Yeah. Would you say it's almost a little more serious?
That's a good word to use. Yeah. Actually, I would say it's a little more serious, which can be a bit of an ambiguous term, but if you've ever heard someone use that, it doesn't mean a wine is better or worse. These words like serious or more complex are kind of thrown around, and seriousness, just a little more tension to the wine, maybe a little more age worthiness. Definitely, a little more astringent on the palate, and both wines have their place. I wouldn't be surprised if after all 3 of these wines, I wouldn't be surprised if the people who tasted these, we took a poll that it wouldn't be close to 1/3 of what their favorite wine was, because seriousness does not dictate necessarily enjoyability or favoritism.
Totally.
But I think this is a really good wine. Actually, both of these wines I've done by the glass at different establishments, so these have always been just great value, true Cabernet style from Napa. In my opinion,
everything you need, nothing you don't.
I like it. Yeah, so we'll move on to wine number 3, which is Turnbull.
I mean, visibly, it's the darkest wine of the 3.
Yeah, that's a good observation there. What does that lead you to believe? Like, what does that give you any conceptions when you're talking about?
Well, I think generally that would lead me to think that this is just more extracted. There's maybe some more. It's likely to be a more tannic wine potentially, but smelling it, I mean, that's a spicier wine, 100%.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say that. And in wine, never feel bashful about being wrong or having a question.
Oh yeah, I'm wrong more than I'm right. That's for sure. Lay it on me.
But yeah, it's always been nice to bring Nick along in the wine world. And so he's thinking this wine's going to be more tannic because it's darker, and that's not necessarily going to be the case, because I wouldn't say you can see tannins. You feel tannins, right? They are compound in the wine. But when I do see, all else equal, 2 Cabernets next to each other, and one of them is darker, it is going to be, to me, a richer wine. most likely, right? It's either, more tannin is probably
being very diplomatic.
It's going to be probably more tannin is probably part of that. But more importantly, as we talk about, the structure of wine, concentration is going to be there. So even if there was more tannin, you might not even feel them, because we know that the density of fruit and the alcohol is going to be there.
It's a balance.
It's a balance game there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you smell it too, and
you can definitely think this is a more concentrated wine just right off the bat.
Yeah, maybe more layers on the nose is what you meant by
it's definitely
spicier. Or what?
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely more complex. I think that there's more going on here. Would you say that this wine is more age-worthy?
Then,
well, we'll go all the way back to the. How about the Branham?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Branhams, I wouldn't. It's going to be as delicious as it's going to be now and for the next 5 years, and then it's on you whether or not you want to age that much longer. The Turnbull is definitely something that we're talking about 100% new oak on this, if I didn't mention that already. So those kind of spice notes that you got on the nose, I think that's being attributed there. It's definitely something that you can cellar, for 10 to 15 years, and it will probably resolve. But acidity is really important in that too, and this is definitely the most concentrated one. So when we talk about Napa being a riper area, getting more alcohol, your acids are going to drop off. So that's also not to say this wine won't age, because it does have that acidity, does have that balance, does have that freshness. But something this rich and concentrated, you do have to be careful how long you do leave that in the cellar. But I'd say, compared to the Branham, it's more serious of a wine, more complexity. The Recoltant, definitely doesn't have that density that the Turnbull has. Not to say, I don't know, jury's not out, but I'd probably say the Turnbull would be a little more age-worthy, just based on the oak regiment, the concentration, and the way that those flavors will develop over time.
And would you say this is like the closest to? I mean, given that it's the furthest south, the coolest part of the valley, would you say that this is more similar to a Bordeaux style Cabernet? No.
So Turnbull is not from the further southern part. So Recoltant is from Colmesville. Yeah. No worries. It's from Colmesville, which is almost the southern tip before Carneros. Turnbull is right in the heart of Napa, right? So we're talking about Rutherford, we're talking about St. Helena. So it's kind of geographically, it's between the other two lines.
So we went kind of south and then came back up.
Got it. But we went in order of concentration, richness, and this is 100% new.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was going to say that was kind of surprising almost that we went cooler and got this, but that makes sense now.
Yeah, because this is, I mean, I think you can feel on the palate. I get a little more kind of that, I actually feel a little Rutherford kind of dustiness on my tongue. There's definitely some layers to this wine that the other two don't quite have, as far as what's packed inside of it. But yeah, if I didn't make that clear when we went into this. So this is all estate fruit, right? Turnbull owes all the
so we know where it's coming from.
We know where it's coming from 4 different vineyards, and they're right in the center part of Napa, and it's got 100% new French oak on it. And you can smell it. You can get those notes of chocolate. To me, this one has the chocolate notes.
Yeah,
this one has. And this one.
So we moved kind of to coffee. Now I see what you were talking about when you said chocolate's even further into that well. Like this, this is a more chocolatey textural wine as well.
More dense.
Yeah.
And that's honestly, this is
rich.
A little more of the quintessential maybe Napa Valley Cabernet you might expect. These are the notes that a lot of people are looking for, but I think these are all pretty pleasing in their own kind of way right there.
Yeah, but I mean, I get to say, even as a person who's not, totally into Napa Cabernet, I like all 3 of these wines, and I think that they're pretty, and they have like an element of levity to them that I don't always expect from Napa, and I think that this is a really cool kind of 3 faces of Napa that I wouldn't have seen before.
That's great, levity. Yeah, balance is the key. Yeah, the key to wine, and I think that the acidity in these wines, these are Somm demand and style. I mean, these are wines that
I can tell
that they have the typicity of the area, aka that fruit, but we always strive for something that has value, most importantly, but also acidity, freshness, and that attributes to the overall balance of a wine.
Great.
Yeah, cool. You want to sum it up? You want me to sum it up?
Go for it. Take it away.
All right. So while Napa Valley is an iconic region that emphasizes on Cabernet, it does not mean that you are priced out of an experience. Again, we talked about how expensive these wines can be when you talk about, the Harlan Estate, the Dominus, the this or that, the Opus One, right? You know how much those wines can go for, but there's still, small producers in the area that make great stuff. That's, a great weekday bottle. There's still, those that are sourcing from really, really great wineries to mix a really nice Cabernet that, again, doesn't break the bank. And then you still can get something that is of that, to me, top echelon quality, estate fruit, 100% new French oak, really full, lush chocolate flavor, real deal. And still doesn't break the bank. So if you know where you're looking for, you're not priced out of Napa yet, not like we are Burgundy. But thank you guys for joining.
Cheers.
We hope you enjoyed the wines and the show.
Cheers.
Great to straight with you.